welcome. Hello, everyone. We still have quite a few of you coming in, so that's why we're starting a few minutes after. We'll try to tighten that up a little bit in the future, but today is actually a pretty chill day, so we have time. It's all good.
I love today because
today's going to be
the
fun.
alternative is horrific. I have to have mousse in my hair.
You have to have mousse? Oh, yeah, you need some, like, compound to,
yeah, with a U. There's a silent U and another S and an E.
Just lick it down. Wonderful. Cool. Some of you, I see that you are stressed about homework, your migraines. Some of you are tired. One just woke up for the first time early. Fantastic. Congratulations. And, you know, who says that you have to wake up at a certain time of day? People can be productive all times a day.
Populations need variance.
Yes,
and
exactly.
So we need people to be up early. We need people to stay up late.
One of you is craving pizza. A
yes,
lot
please.
A lot of you are probably feeling quite a bit of stress. We hear you. It's always really good to share those feelings because then you'll realize that it's totally not just you.
You are not alone.
You're not alone. In many, many respects, you are not alone. Actually, I think that's been one of the biggest challenges of being remote is the fact that we then start to feel like we're the only ones. But you are not.
That's one of the reasons I like being alone with you. That when we're alone, we're here.
Yeah, and we can talk about
I feel pretty lucky.
It's kind of really great. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Anytime you want to share, please do feel free. Reach out. We have the chat open. It's all good. Stressed about homework with this class or like all classes. We do our very best to try to sort of, take away as much of the like time, pressure, crunch, stress. That's why we do most of our studying in class together so that we can get a bit of a feel for where you're all at and make any sort of subtle corrections or changes or adjustments and that kind of thing. So hopefully, I know 1070 is stressful. I mean, school is stressful. I get that, and fully respect it.
Well, we're looking for small corrections, not like large Chuck Norris corrections. That's, of course, a reference that everyone will get because it's to Conan O'Brien in the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
Making reference to another show from the 80s.
Oh, my goodness.
that's nested old school.
Okay, good. So, somebody's drawn this wolf. Wesley, dude, that's amazing. I love that, right up here. Okay.
There's a question about annotations. Can we turn them off until they're needed, please? They're pretty distracting.
Yeah,
yes.
so
I thought that was about the words, which, of course, you can turn off.
Yeah.
But now this was a place where we actually encouraged some annotations.
Yep.
And we've heard them.
Yep.
And we see them.
Yep.
And
there actually won't be all that much opportunity for annotations today. So unless you've got like some pressing question, you can put your questions in the margin. That's no problem. You can use the text tool, but also there's the chat that's available. So if you have to ask a question about what's going on,
the chat's there, and then also some of what we're doing will be collected in the Google land, so we'll be able to see your thoughts. Your thoughts will be seen.
Okay, super, great. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to clear.
And there's a couple I'm just jumping in response because it's quicker than my typing, and I saw that my typing requires some more caffeine because I was making a lot of errors earlier. About whether or not these topic tests are using Respondus. No, nothing in this class will be using Respondus. And a reminder that if you are taking classes that require Respondus, you should not. And get in touch with us because there's a specific phraseology to use that should reclaim your rights.
Yep, exactly. The other thing is that some of you have asked about the format of this course and when we're going face-to-face. We are not going face-to-face in this course ever. So we made it because one of the big things that we learned is that the major sort of challenge that students experience in their learning is when there is this like unintended or like abrupt shift, pivot they call it. Apparently that's been demonstrated to be the most disruptive thing for student learning. And so what we did was we designed the course so that it won't have to pivot. So everything that we've got in terms of the plan is what we're going to be doing, barring the catastrophic breakdown of the internet. We will be bringing you this course in the way that we've been doing it from the beginning. So once you get familiar with the format, then it'll just be smooth sailing to the end.
And if there's a catastrophic breakdown of the internet, we'll presume that the news media will still exist, and what they'll want to cover is the fact that we have gone out onto the front porch and we will just be shouting.
We'll be shouting.
And so the news item to check will be like crazy people on porch shouting biodiversity enthusiasm. Will seminars go in person? No.
Nothing.
Class.
Everything is the way that it's going to be. That's how we like to do it, so that you can plan and you can make decisions and things like this, because important. If some of you are feeling a little bit frustrated or stressed about the potential for changes in formats and when is that going to happen, and shouldn't we have just planned to keep it all the same from the beginning because students. There is a petition, a letter that's going out that you're welcome to sign or not sign.
The link is in the
we'll put the
chat.
link in the chat.
You scroll down.
Yeah, basically it's just calling for the ability for students and their instructors to make decisions based on what's best for them. Take a look. If you'd like to sign it, please do. If you don't, it's totally cool.
Can I put the link to your letter in the chat? This has come up a bunch of times. People are looking for the...
We'll link also the respondus suggestions. If you want to get in touch with more specifics, please go ahead and do that. You have to do it at least 3 days before your assessment, but the longer you can give faculty to be able to offer you the alternate assessment, the better. That's just being kind, especially if you anticipate that it will be a violation of your human rights. You can do that more than 3 days before.
Okay. And whether or not you anticipate being a violation of your human rights, it is.
It is.
And it's completely ass backwards that you would have to reclaim. That's kind of how human rights works. You ought not to reclaim them.
Yes.
But that ass backwards path is what we seem to be on. Thank you for those of you who asked if we're recording. We, of course, as you know, have forgotten sometimes, but we are.
Thank you.
We are recording. We're not recording in Zoom. We don't record in Zoom because we can create a better video with better ratio of us and the screen by recording. So it doesn't change what you see live, but go check out the asynchronous stuff. It looks a little bit different.
Ce sont différences,
it's magnifique.
Okay. Biology?
Yeah, let's do biodiversity.
Oh,
of life.
Even better. Do you have those links ready for the Google spreadsheets? I think you do. Okay, so we're going to go back to some of that homework that we've been talking about and hopefully you've been able to kind of play around with these ideas, with the costs and the benefits and the differences starting out with between the two different life strategies of the different families of mussels. So we talked about the unionids and their Glochidia larvae that occupy that special relationship with a host fish. And then we've introduced the zebra mussels that are not parasitic on any kind of host fish. And both strategies, of course, exist. Therefore, one is not necessarily better than another. And there are costs and benefits associated with each of those when we think about them from an ecological, evolutionary, or physiological perspective. So that's kind of what we want you to kind of share. And we asked you to think about one benefit and one cost, hoping that with 1,000 of you, we're going to get a really nice long list of advantages and disadvantages. So we want you to bring that positive in the chat. Oh, go to the chat. Go to the chat, and there will be a whole bunch of links there. And for your surname, just click on, hopefully there'll be enough space. If you get to one and it's occupied, just jump onto another. It doesn't matter which one you end up in as long as there's space for you.
Oh my God, it matters so much.
It matters?
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay, so just pop in some of your thoughts, and we will watch you and make comments live.
I always feel
This is, like in some respects, this tool is so much better than having you in a big classroom doing it, because we can actually comment and give you feedback right away in a way that we couldn't do if you were just kind of, talking to your neighbor about it. So
it's literally going to come back with us. Whenever we do go back in person,
we're taking Zoom with us.
This is coming with us.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Okay, so here's kind of what you'll be seeing when you click.
Well,
and you're already
done,
filling
everybody.
up. That's great. Okay, super good. Can I update live here or no?
No, it has to have to jump out of the screen view. That's a...
Oh,
At some point, the Google will have to
the Google fails
make that
us.
better.
Yeah, we should send them our videos so that they can see how we would like to use them.
Hello, Google.
We
I
have
know
thoughts.
you've been thinking about us, and I know that because my ads change according to what I say in my house.
Oh, yeah. That was freaky.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so if I get out, does it, will it now update?
It should.
Maybe not. I see you writing in the actual live version.
So let's leave them there for a second.
Okay, we'll just
try
leave it there.
So see over here. There's hidden up there.
There, I see it. There. Haha. So good. This is great. Amazing. Okay.
Oh, well done you for MacGyvering your connection. I can't see it because it's in light blue and my eyes are old. How old? Really real old. E. Sawyer with bad Wi-Fi, so using personal hotspot from your phone to be in the meet. Well done. Thank you. I hope your data is okay.
Yeah.
The Veliger is like zebras, right? Left.
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, where's the link? Scroll down.
Scroll down.
Scroll down.
Look skyward. Okay.
I've lost my drum.
Where is my drum?
Drum lost.
Drum found. Okay. Okay, really good. Okay, so let's...
That's, of course, a reference to Kids in the Hall from the 1980s.
No,
we're just
Kids
like
in the
bang,
Hall?
bang, bang.
Oh,
if
no.
you don't, you will soon be, or have the chance if you get Prime, because they have new shows coming out.
Do they?
All those kids in their 50s and 60s.
Are no longer kids. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these answers. Thank you so much. Pros for the Glochidia. So those are the ones that look like the little pack people that are going into the host species as well. Some of the pros can produce large amount of offspring, sure. Reliance on other species for reproduction. One of the cons, yes, that's definitely a disadvantage. Host may die, exactly. That's why it might be a disadvantage. Needs to effectively find and trap a host, short period to find. So it's got to actually get into the host, and that's not going to happen to all of them. Needs a fish host. Okay. The pros, they can go upstream. Amazing. The Veliger larvae, of course, cannot because they essentially become planktonic or they end up floating. That's what planktonic means. They become part of the plankton, which by definition gets distributed around the ocean because they don't have the energy necessary to overcome the force of the currents. Okay. Avoidance of competition, that's super interesting and like totally loaded with all sorts of things that can come from there. What else are you seeing?
B. Snyderman, I'm just, yes, that is, I crush your head. I crush your head.
Okay, Kids in the Hall. For the Veliger larvae, it doesn't need a host to survive, no need to attract, can produce enormous amounts of larvae, yes. And my guess too, so I was looking at it for the pro of the Glochidia too, where it did say that there were a lot of offspring. Yes, and I might say that actually their ability to produce individual offspring might be reduced given the complexity of Glochidia, as well as the need to expend energy on the lure system. So here's me adding kind of a con to the Glochidia life cycle, is that quite a bit of energy has to go into creating a lure or a way of attracting a fish host in a way that the Veliger larvae mussels don't need to. Right, so there's kind of another sort of pro and con.
There's a request to change.
I'm sorry.
The screen.
You want to see it larger?
Yeah.
Okay.
We could just present it now.
Oh, it's true. Maybe that's better. Hold on.
Just a tick.
Just a second. There we go. Is that okay? I hope that's okay. As I cycle through them, though, if there's one that you want us to talk about specifically, just give us a little stamp, okay?
Yeah, and actually, as a word about the visibility, even though there's a lot of different sheets, so you're not going to be able to see everybody's. I can't tell you that there's lots of good points in everybody's.
Yeah.
So kind of scroll around, see what others have written in your Google spreadsheet.
External fertilization doesn't make the equipment for doesn't make their equipment for strong current. I'm not sure I totally understand what that means may not be able to find proper fish hosts.
I think it's them equipped.
Doesn't make them equipped for strong current environments. That's good. Yes, I like that. Thank you. Thank you. Obviously, sorry.
The next thing we're going to do is charades. It's like, okay, Glochidia, first word. It sounds like, I don't know what it sounds like.
The pro, yeah, they get nutrition from the fish. Okay, so one of the pros that I'm not seeing yet in the Glochidia side of things is that, so one of the cons of the Veliger larvae life cycle would be that they are subject to predation, right? Pretty much their entire time that they are a larvae. The pro for the Glochidia side would be that they are not subject to predation unless something's going to predate their host fish, right? So once the Glochidia make it into the gill tissue of the fish, they're pretty golden there. As long as the fish doesn't die, they're going to be okay, right? And yeah, the fish can die, which is a risk. And also the species of fish that they're adapted to can also go extinct. So these are all sort of cons that could introduce challenges to the species, right, from both sides. Anything else that we want to add?
I think there are other subtle ones, but they fall under the big picture things that we've talked about.
Okay. Super. Wonderful. Well done. Thank you.
So that, I mean, it's the apparent contradiction that I love. The fact that it's depending on another species is a pro and a con.
Yeah.
It's a classic case of this contradiction being it depends.
Totally.
It can be protection, and you're golden once you're in there locked onto the gill. But if the gill is eaten, or the gill goes extinct,
yeah, extinction is catastrophic for them, right? Okay, wonderful. This is really great. Thank you so much for doing this. And you can see we have all sorts of different answers, different perspectives. Yeah, there we go. Greater susceptibility to predation. I see it here now. Wonderful. Good. Okay. So here, let's try to bring everything together. And I will send this to you in a poll in just a second. So please do not annotate the slide.
No annotation.
And just share your answer here through the poll. Okay.
As they're going, there are a couple of questions about where the background information about Veliger and Glochidia was.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And somebody's saying a black box covering the middle of the screen.
Oh, that would be the questions. It's the questions.
It doesn't show up when we...
I guess not. Or for some people it doesn't. Yeah.
Can't read options A to C. I think... Is it better?
Yeah, that probably would have blocked.
I'm just asking...
Yeah. Depending on the speed, it could come out as black, or it could be...
Yeah, those of you who are having this... The poll has the questions, and I think they're written out in mostly in full. Is the screen better now, though? From our perspective, it should be.
Yeah.
Yes, it sounds like it is. Good.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Top right-hand corner, they're seeing a black box. That's our video.
That's our video.
Weird. Can you see us? That's interesting.
I guess I should read the question.
Yeah.
True statement. Good. 70% of you have already clicked in. Well done. We'll wait until it gets a little bit higher. So even if you can't actually click, that's not really the point.
Yeah.
What we want you to do, though, is to pick one answer and commit to it. Just a little reminder, if it's not the correct answer, that's fine. If it's the correct answer, it's fine. What it does is it creates that little anchor, that little flag in your brain, so that you can either kind of increase some learning around that area, or just use that as a check off, like you understand, and move on, right? So just commit to one. Okay. And another, say, 30 seconds.
Sounds like maybe Zoom has changed something.
Yeah. There was an update recently.
Was there?
Yeah. Okay, 10 more seconds.
That's okay. We can figure that out later. They can still see us, but they can't see where our screen is, which is fine, because that's kind of how we've designed the slides most of the time.
Yeah. Okay. Super. I'm going to end the poll, and then I'll share the results.
Fun.
Okay, so just to give you here a clue, the answer in this particular question is C. So that is the only true statement. It means that every other statement is completely false, not slightly or more or less true. No, they are complete. That's how we do it. It's either completely false or completely true. There's no sort of degree of truthiness. We don't do that. That's not fair. So C is the only one that is completely true. So the Glochidia, if you remember, they're the ones that go into the host species, and then they swim upstream or they swim away, right? So they create some distance from one group or subpopulation of Glochidia from another group. And so that creates a bit of subdivision. One of the things that you may have already encountered in the readings, we're going to reinforce a little bit today, is the idea that speciation, or the sort of evolution of new species, can only really happen when there are these barriers to gene flow. And don't worry if all of this sounds completely foreign to you or alien to you. It's okay. We're going to go through it. But the idea is that in order for speciation to happen, there has to be this kind of isolation and these kind of subdivisions or partitioning. And then E was, I think, the second, because those two are opposite, right? So one of them has to be true and the other one isn't. But with Veliger larvae, of course, they're being sort of distributed widely within the water column, and so there is no sort of subdivision or these like isolation pockets necessarily, or by definition, and therefore they're less likely to speciate than the Glochidia larvae are. I hope that was okay. Okay, so sit back, relax. We're gonna tell you some stuff. We're gonna show you some stuff.
Yeah, no, there's some questions in the chat about what a definition of speciate is. We'll talk about that.
Through that right now.
And it's a we haven't actually provided you with a straightforward. Yeah. We've talked about it a couple times. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about under the hood, though.
Yeah, and it's covered in the readings as well, quite a bit. But don't worry, this is what you're here for. Okay, so a whole bunch of words on the slide. Do you want to go through it?
Yes, so under the hood, when we talk about speciation.
Do you want all the words?
No.
No, you do it.
So when we're talking about speciation, we're talking about essentially genetic variation being selected or occurring through time. And there's causes and consequences of that. The causes, this is the under the hood part, so differences in the DNA amongst individuals within a population of a species. So alleles, if we talk about alleles, we're talking about different versions of the same gene, and that genetic variation can change populations in various ways. And this is kind of the meat of under the hood. This is looking at mutation, natural selection, genetic drift, and gene flow. And evolution depends on the first and can proceed by either of the final three. And you've probably, as a biologist, you've probably been trained about one of them, about natural selection. So we'll talk about that. But the other two are very important. So the primary source, the ultimate source of variation in biological systems is mutation. Okay? Occasionally it can result from recombination. Mutation, and this is, to me, inherently why I think of this in a fractal way, that it scales, that errors are how we learn. That's like when we talk about making a stand and choosing one of those, and it's fine if it's not the right one. The important part is to make that choice. This is literally true in biology as well, that because of that errors are how biology proceeds as well. You screw up and you're, exactly. So,
Smith.
My pedagogy scales.
It's good. And, lately we've been talking quite a bit about mutations and variants and things like this. And I think it's really important to reinforce the idea that mutations are errors in copying, right? And so they are not intentional, they are not predictable, their consequences, like what it's going to do is not known. Things don't mutate in order to, right?
Yeah, there's no direction.
That's right. It's just what happens to those mutations that can be selected for, that can be amplified, or that can be eliminated. But until that mutation happens, we have no way of knowing whether the mutation will result in something that's more transmissible or more virulent or cause more disease, for example. We don't know that. Yeah. So this notion in the media that's going around that viruses become less severe, right, or become more mild is without evidence base at all, because we just don't know what the next mutation might do. So they do not occur in order to benefit the organism.
Which is what I was saying with kind of another way of understanding the lack of directionality.
Yeah.
You maybe heard about Lamarck, and you may were told about this ancient kind of French biologist who told the hand-wavy story about, well, there's a giraffe that needs to eat the leaves at the taller part of the tree. So
it stretches its neck. No.
And then,
So please don't be overwhelmed by this, but mutation is a loaded term, right? I mean, everything in biology is a loaded term, but mutation is a loaded term because it can happen in different ways. And all of them are called mutations. So you can have a point mutation, which is the swapping out of a single base pair, right? A single letter in your sequence of DNA. You can have a chromosome mutation. You can have a gene duplication. Or you can have a genome duplication, all of which kind of fall within this notion or this kind of concept of mutation. All of them, depending upon which one it is, have some different and similar consequences. Also, some of the consequences could be absolutely no consequence, right? So it's not necessarily that the mutation or the event is going to lead to something bad. It's not that it's going to lead to something good. It could very well lead to something neutral. And biological systems have all of this fantastic sort of resilience built into it to minimize the effects of mutations, for example. So there's DNA repair enzymes. There's also, and this to me freaks me out, but you know how, like, in order to code for an amino acid, you need 3 base pairs? And that in many respects, you can have 3 different combinations that lead to the same amino acid. That's kind of one of the potential insurance policies for minimizing the effect of a point mutation.
And it's literally amazing to me because there are multiple translation tables, and that feature, that redundancy, is inherent to all of those translation. So the fact that 3rd base pair mutations are almost always invisible.
Wonderful.
2nd, most of the time. 1st, well, okay, we'll change some things. And so there was a question in the chat about, wait a second, how does mutation not benefit the organisms? And that redundancy suggests to us that much of the time it is catastrophic. If what you build is no longer, like, even just think of a simple, if your allele builds a protein and you switch the if it kind of flips, you build the same protein, but now all of a sudden it looks different, it's not functional.
Yeah.
And if that's a critical part of any of the Krebs acid or whatever cycle it's part of, then you're dead.
You're dead. It's not viable. So there are tons of DNA or mutation repair kind of systems that have evolved in order to prevent them, and yet still they happen, and yet still there are consequences. And here are some of the potential consequences, just to give you an idea of how it scales, right?
And again, sorry, also not just before we leave, not to overwhelm you with that, but of course, these are phrases that now you can Google. If you haven't before, you can.
Yeah. Okay. So let's deal first with natural selection, because I feel, and you feel, that you probably feel like you understand it pretty well. So we're not going to belabor this whole thing about natural selection. We do feel like most people coming through their education do have a good handle on natural selection. The thing that's important about natural selection is that once this totally random mutation happens, if natural selection kicks in, then it becomes a non-random mechanism by which there's an amplification of that mutation event. So if the mutation happens to be beneficial with respect to the fitness of the organism, then it is possible that natural selection will amplify it within the population. It's not guaranteed. You could evolve the best, like superhuman ability to fly and then accidentally slip on a ladder, and it could get removed from the population, right? It's not guaranteed that that's going to be the thing that, you know, causes you to pass on more of your genetic information to the next generation. But probability-wise, over a long period of time, it is possible that that specific mutation or that specific phenotype will be amplified in the population. And if that happens, that's natural selection. Anything else you want to add about natural selection?
Okay. That's great.
So the mutation is random always. If it is selected for because it benefits the fitness, then it is natural selection, and that is, by definition, non-random. Okay? Natural selection. The environment, nature, is selecting. And what is selected for can change if the environment changes.
It will change,
right?
As the environment changes, yeah.
So what is adaptive is another word, right? What leads to adaptation may be different depending upon the environmental conditions.
So under that umbrella of natural selection, other terms that would fall under it that you might have heard would be artificial selection, sexual selection. Those kinds of things are kind of special cases of dialing into specific cases of natural selection.
Yeah. Okay. Good. More about that next week.
There's a question about statistics for how often beneficial mutations happen, and I was writing the answer, but I think there's two things. One of them is it's very hard for us to develop or to quantify the denominator, say, or the numerator, however you look at it, the catastrophic mutations, and that's because catastrophic mutations, we don't see them.
Nope.
They don't live. They don't survive.
Viable embryos or seeds or whatever, right?
And so why do we presume that they exist, though? And part of it is we're inferring it from that redundancy in the genetic code, that if there wasn't that redundancy where most mutations are invisible, are synonymous, that suggests there's a strict selection, that most of them are going to be not good.
Yeah. So we want you now to completely put away all of the non-random mechanisms that fall under the umbrella of evolution, and we want to introduce to you the idea of random mechanisms by which alleles can be amplified within a population. But it remains as random as the mutation itself, right, for the reason for why it does, okay? And so we'll spend more time actually playing this out for you because it's probably less familiar. So that's called genetic drift, right? It's a big umbrella term under evolution alongside natural selection as another sort of random way that things can change in a population, that the allele frequencies can change. So it's differences in survival, not on the basis of these heritable characteristics. So it is random, okay? We'll give you a couple of examples of what that might look like, but in order to do that, I have to bring you over to my PowerPoint slides.
Come on along.
I know, because for some reason, Google Slides doesn't like my, here we go, from current slide, it doesn't like my slideshow with the animations. So here, okay, so we're back to where we were. So taking a look first at genetic drift. This is like an overall kind of demonstration of the effect of genetic drift. Imagine, and this is going to be hard for Dr. Smith, but imagine that we have a population of six-legged spiders.
Oh, I've forgotten this part of it. I wish you'd given me a trigger warning.
Like, and I'm not even going to put two more legs on them because I know it bothers you. Okay, so imagine we have a population of six-legged spiders, and all we're doing, and there's variation in that population beyond their color, right? But this is just a way of sort of graphically demonstrating what's going on here. So imagine then that we have 50% are red and 50% are blue, okay? And due to a random subsampling, so for no reason related to their genetic fitness, we then go and choose, I bet you because of the number of people on the Zoom, it's like super slow. Okay, we go on, we randomly choose which ones are going to make it to the next generation, right? And we bring them over to the other side. So after a certain amount of time, this is now our new sort of seed population. And they're allowed to reproduce. Oh, there we go. Okay, so they reproduce. And we see that after that random kind of selection, random kind of just grabbing of these spiders, we have a difference in the proportion of red to the proportion of blue. So that's like the overall kind of like what genetic drift can look like, right? So it isn't selection. It's not that the blue ones are fitter. It's just that's who reproduced. That's who passed on their genes, okay? There are two cases that make it so much easier to understand. And so what we'll do then is underneath genetic drift, we'll give you two examples of extreme genetic drift so that you can maybe better appreciate the conditions under which that might happen. So we'll start off first with something called the bottleneck effect. So we go back to our 50-50 representation of the two different colors in the population, and we dramatically reduce the size of the population. That's what a bottleneck is. When you reduce the size of the population, okay? And you might reduce the size of a population due to some random event, right? Like a tornado. Uh-oh, I'm sad that it's not going okay. So there was, I don't know why it's not working. I think everything's just like really slow today. It's never not worked before. Okay, but imagine we've got this tornado that comes in and just, again, creates a path that randomly takes out a whole bunch of spiders, okay? So here's my tornado at the top, and it was supposed to follow this path and wipe out a bunch of spiders. So let's imagine then that the tornado is moving through, and this is the population that is left, okay? So we go from 50-50 tornado experience that reduces the size of the population, and what we're left with is a difference in the proportion, right? We go from 50-50 to 42-58, simply as a result of this event that killed off a bunch of spiders, not because those were less fit, but simply because they were in the way of the tornado, right? So that's a bottleneck effect that results in a different proportion of the alleles within the population. Okay, and then the next one is called the founder effect, and this is also a form of genetic drift. It's not a reduction in the size of the population, but rather the kind of development of a new population from a subset of an original population. So the founder effect, again, if we start with our 50-50, 50 red, 50 blue, and we imagine a situation in which a whole bunch of spiders leave that main population to go and start a new population on an island. And we do that. Look, they're moving. We do that. And again, not because one of them is more fit than the other, but just because those are the ones that blew over on the island, or that, you know, crawled up in the feathers of a bird and then fell off the bird when the bird got to the island kind of deal. It creates a different proportion of red versus blue. And that is called the founder effect. Okay, so those are two examples that can lead to rather extreme genetic drift. Then, gene flow. So this is not to do with genetic drift, not to do with natural selection. This is another mechanism that can happen. And gene flow is the exchange of alleles through reproduction across two populations of the same species. Okay? So flow is a good word to kind of like anchor your understanding of it too, because the idea is you have two populations, they might have different proportions of red and blue spiders, and they start to interbreed of six-legged, no, they're not going to mutate two extra
cats.
legs.
No, they're cats, they're just insects.
Okay, they start to interbreed, And then the variation starts to look a lot the same across those two populations because the genes are flowing back and forth through reproduction between those two populations. Okay? So this is also random unless it's not. And this is the fun one. Okay, don't worry. We're going to give you a homework tool that's going to help you, so it's okay. So gene flow can look like this. We start out with two populations. One of them is entirely red, right? We're just going to show you an extreme, right? And then one of them has 27% and 73%. And then the idea is that the spiders are immigrating and emigrating. This is where immigration and emigration become important concepts when we talk about them from an evolutionary perspective, because that's what gene flow is. So we have this immigration and emigration of the genes back and forth. Spiders not only are going there, but they're leaving their genetic material there, so they're reproducing there. And what we end up with then over time is something that then starts to look more and more similar with respect to the balance of the allele frequencies between those two populations. Okay? Anything you want to add on any of those?
No, I just want to...
Are we doing okay in the chat?
Yeah, we're doing, keep it on top of the chat, trying to. And I think I would like to have, as we fix these animations, I would like to make some kind of like a superhero-y anime style gene flow, like Jean.
Oh, okay.
Flow, the hero.
Okay.
Now, the gene flow, in terms of the first poll that we did, where the second largest proportion of you had answered E, as this is actually the root of why that wasn't a correct selection, was because the increase in gene flow doesn't increase speciation, decreases it.
If you're having populations that are looking more and more similar, then they're not going to speciate. Speciate means that the populations are so dissimilar that they can't actually interbreed, right? So the idea is gene flow kind of interferes with speciation. So when you have a barrier to gene flow, so say, for example, those spiders could not cross that strait of water, then it's very likely or possible that the spiders on the island, if given enough time, will evolve into something that can't interbreed with the ones on the mainland, and then you have a speciation event, right? Okay. Just for fun, here's another question.
This is the old version. Is it the same answer?
Oh, hold on, you're right. Wait a second. Let me get out of the PowerPoint just in case we changed it.
Michael Scott.
Yeah, okay. Back here. And slideshow. And stop sharing. And I will now call up another poll. This one here. Question number 4. Launch. There you go.
Oh dear.
What's that?
Somebody compared us to Holly and Michael.
Who's that?
Which is from The Office, which Holly hasn't seen.
Go watch The Office.
It's too uncomfortable.
It's too uncomfortable for me. I don't want to watch it.
Brilliant.
No. Shh, they're working.
Yeah, so they're. Oh, I want to answer that. I want to know. Is that Jack just being tired that Daniel's asleep?
I think so.
Did you see this question?
Which one? Just one. Yeah. Uh-oh.
So,
Yeah, I can see. Hello? Hi, how are you? Oh, thank you. I thought maybe, yeah. Yeah, and I thought we would.
So we have a call from the kids' school. That's what's going on. And we've still got some time. Keep going. The Jeopardy theme song continues. We're going to keep this going until we get upwards of 90% of you committing to an answer. All right, we're approaching 90%. We're also approaching the end of class, so let's end the poll. And we'll bring that over the screen. So most of you chose option A, B, C. After a careful study of DNA sequences reveals that a population of mussels in a particular litter had very little genetic variation, which of the following statements do you reject as a plausible explanation? Most of you chose C. That there was a great deal of movement of mussels into this river. So that is the correct, that's the one you would reject, because a great deal of movement could bring variability. So you'd reject that as a source of the lack of variability, right? I see that it is 3:20, so we're going to say, take care of each other, take care of yourselves, take care of yourselves first, and then take care of others. Be kind, be empathetic, and continue here with us. We're going to turn off the camera for a second and then pop back out, pop back in, and we'll be here for a little while to answer any questions. And we will see you. Let me just go ahead here. We're going to see you on Wednesday. These last couple of slides, which are in the PowerPoint, the PDF that'll be online, this is for a way for you to codify whether or not you're looking at random or non-random, and what happens to genetic variability. So there's also a mental map where you can kind of group all of these things. So we're over time. We're going to shut down and come back in a second, but well done you.
Yes. Take care.
We'll see all of you Wednesday. We'll see those of you that hang around shortly.
Okay. Bye.
Woo-hoo!
Sorry, that was the school calling.
Mm-hmm. So we can stop the share.
Yeah. And there we go. Stop sharing. Stop recording.